Not all places on Earth are fit for living. From extreme climates to toxic environments, some locations push human survival to the limit. Here are the most unlivable places on Earth. Khayelitsha, South Africa. Khayelitsha, located on the outskirts of Cape Town, is one of South Africa's largest, not to mention deadliest, townships. Its population of between 400,000 and 750,000 people live in extreme poverty, inadequate housing, and have limited access to basic services like clean water, electricity, and sanitation. Gang violence is a constant concern. In the 2022 reporting period, Khayelitsha's 3 police stations recorded 513 murders. That's an average of 1.4 murders per day. To put this in perspective, the settlement spans just 39.47 square kilometers, or 15.24 square miles, making it one of the most dangerous places to live in the world. Zaatari Refugee Camp, Jordan. Zaatari Refugee Camp, opened in 2012, is now home to over 77,000 Syrian refugees. What started as a temporary haven has transformed into a semi-permanent city of metal shelters, makeshift businesses, and overcrowded schools. Life in the camp is anything but easy. More than half the population is minors, and many are forced into labor. 69% work to help support their families. Mental health issues are widespread, and it's made worse by limited access to medical care. Add overcrowding, water shortages, and deprivation to the mix, and it's clear why Zaatari is a heartbreaking place to live. Central African Republic, rural areas. The Central African Republic, CAR, is a landlocked country in Central Africa, bordered by Chad, Sudan, South Sudan, Cameroon, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Despite its name, it's one of the continent's most underdeveloped nations, and life in CAR's rural areas is particularly harsh. Extreme poverty and ongoing violence from armed groups make survival a daily battle. Rural villages are raided or burned on a frequent basis, and with little to no infrastructure, access to clean water, or healthcare, education is basically non-existent. Farming, the main livelihood for many, is often disrupted by conflict, so apart from the violence, communities are vulnerable to hunger too. Kibera, Kenya. Kibera, one of the largest and most notorious slums in the world, can be found on the outskirts of Nairobi. Homes are small mud or concrete huts with dirt floors, and the water supply is often contaminated, spreading diseases like typhoid and cholera. Toilet facilities are nothing more than shared pits and are used by hundreds. Half of Kibera's population is unemployed. As such, many turn to glue sniffing or changa, a potent local brew, to escape their daily struggles. Women are often forced into sex work to survive, making AIDS and orphan children, sometimes born with the disease, one of the slum's defining features. Delhi, India. For most of us, breathing clean air is something we take for granted. But for Delhi, that privilege evaporated decades ago, swallowed by the city's spiraling pollution crisis. India's capital is now swamped by smog, with air pollution killing an estimated 2 million Indians every year. In fact, in November 2024, the Air Quality Index reported readings over 1,700 in some areas, meaning the air is basically unbreathable. And unfortunately, pollution isn't the city's only challenge. Crime rates are rising. Gender-based violence is a daily occurrence. Poverty remains widespread, and many residents live in overcrowded areas without basic amenities. Site Soleil, Haiti. Can you imagine living in a place where gangs decide if you eat, where snipers kill indiscriminately, and where basic health care is non-existent? Well, that's the daily reality for hundreds of thousands of people in Site Soleil, on the outskirts of Port-au-Prince. In 2022, over 260 murders were reported in just 6 months in one neighborhood alone, alongside countless rapes, kidnappings, and violent attacks. Gangs block access to food, water, and medicine, forcing families to survive in unimaginable conditions. Cholera and other waterborne diseases spread easily in the filth, and the kind of life you and I consider normal is just a far-off dream. San Pedro Sula, Honduras. San Pedro Sula was the murder capital of the world from 2011 to early 2016, and while the murder rate has dropped since those dark years, the city's problems with violence are far from over. According to the 2024 Crime Index, San Pedro Sula still scores an alarming 79.74, and much of the violence is linked to drug trafficking and gang activity, which overwhelms the city's police force. Corruption within law enforcement is also an ongoing problem, and most crimes go unresolved. That is, if they are even investigated at all. Khartoum, Sudan. Khartoum, the capital of Sudan, has become a city of unthinkable suffering since the civil war erupted in April 2023. The violent conflict between the Sudanese Armed Forces, SAF, and the Rapid Support Forces, RSF, has claimed over 61,000 civilian lives and displaced over 11 million people. Essential services like electricity, clean water, and healthcare are virtually non-existent. And football stadiums have even been turned into graveyards due to the sheer number of deaths. Humanitarian aid is almost impossible to deliver, and ongoing mass killings, sexual violence, and famine conditions have made Khartoum one of the worst and most tragic places to live in the world today. Juba, South Sudan. How much do you know about the humanitarian crisis in South Sudan? South Sudan became independent from Sudan on July 9, 2011, after decades of civil war and conflict. And while Khartoum is the epicenter of full-scale urban warfare, Juba faces a different but equally devastating struggle. South Sudan's capital is plagued by chronic poverty, political instability, and a crumbling economy. Civil servants have gone unpaid for nearly a year, and the government has resorted to taxing humanitarian aid, leaving millions in even greater need. Nearly 2.32 million South Sudanese have fled to neighboring countries, and 2.22 million remain internally displaced, making theirs the largest refugee crisis in Africa and the third largest in the world. Norilsk, Russia. Norilsk, tucked away deep in Siberia's Arctic wilderness, started as a Soviet Gulag labor camp in the 1920s and later became a hub for nickel mining and smelting. Today, after decades of heavy industry, the city has been left with a grim legacy. Over 1.9 million tons of sulfur dioxide are pumped into the air every year, causing acid rain that's turned the surrounding 30 miles into a barren wasteland. Winters here are brutal, with temperatures plunging below minus 50 degrees Celsius. For residents, life is a constant battle against pollution, sky-high cancer rates, and a life expectancy well below the Russian average. Surviving in these places is nearly impossible, yet some still call them home. Would you dare live in any of these extreme locations? The world is full of challenges and surprises. Follow us for more facts.